Hello and welcome to another edition of the Gimme Babble demo videos, part of the Gimme Babble podcast series hosted by myself, David Huckbaum, as well as my good friend and fellow artist, David Stupakis. You can find our podcast on iTunes. You can find us on SoundCloud. Please do check it out. It's a semi-weekly get-together where David and I continue our conversations that we've had over the decades as friends, talking about art and process and life and survival and kvetching and complaining.
Because it's annoying.
As well as conspiring and trying to inspire one another in our work.
I'm like, happy God.
Yeah.
Like, this sucks.
And we do also open it up to Q&A, to people to write in. We have interviews with fellow artists. It's a lot of fun. Please do check it out, Gimme Babble. Also on our YouTube Gimme Babble channel, you'll find other DIY videos on how to mount prints, how to build frames, and in this particular video, how to make wax encaustics. My specific use for wax encaustic is for finishing. I use it to coat my work, whether it's print or collage, mixed media, small works, or even large-scale works at times. I use wax encaustic as a finishing cover to add a protective layer, as well as eliminate the need for using glass. So if you're interested in wax encaustics, I encourage you to do your homework, due diligence, and look up other applications for it, as well as different variations of recipes. The recipe I'm going to show you is one that I've come up with after much trial and error of finding the right consistency, the right firmness of wax. Now, I need a wax that is hard but not too brittle, so it doesn't crack. And I'm going to go over are the basic ingredients that you need to make this wax. The ingredients are just 3 parts. And these 3 parts are beeswax, carnauba wax, and damar resin crystals. All these items are relatively easy to find, but you certainly can find it on the internet. The particular place where I get my ingredients is called Talus. I'm going to endorse them even though I'm not paid, but I've been using this place for many, many years. I recommend Talus online. They're suppliers of certain archival glues and waxes and papers, and they're based in Brooklyn. They used to have a brick and mortar in Manhattan I used to go to all the time when I lived there. They moved to Brooklyn shortly before I moved out to Boston, and I now go to Talus Online to get all my materials. So once again, those 3 ingredients that you're going to need: beeswax, carnauba wax, and damar. Now, the beeswax, very common. You can get bleached or unbleached, bleach being white. Don't be afraid of the term bleach. It doesn't mean it's going to burn a hole in everything you put through. But once again, due diligence, do your homework, find out what you're using and what it's good for before you use it. Like all the other videos that I do here, I show you not how to do, but how I do, and perhaps maybe you can do too. Okay, second ingredient is the carnauba wax. Now, carnauba wax is another form of wax that comes in these hard pellets, but the downfall to that, it's very brittle, so use very little. And the third ingredient, which is damar resin, which is a resin from a tree from the East Indies, and you can look that up yourself and find out the history of all these ingredients, which is part of the fun, I think, in when you explore different mediums. You learn different histories, where they come from, sustainability, all those other things, which you can then customize to your own studio, which is what I did. And I encourage you to do the same. You can just copy. It's easy, but it might not be exactly what you need. Now, my secret recipe is not really a secret because it's just ingredients you can get. It's just the numbers that I came up with. But once you do come up with your own recipe, I highly encourage you to write it down in 10,000 different places so you don't lose it. First time I made my recipe, I did not write it down, and I sort of had to re-explore. Okay then, so besides our 3 ingredients that we need to make this, there's a bunch of other materials that you need in order to get this done. I'm going to go over the must-haves first. Must have a scale for measuring out your ingredients. I use a digital scale. I find it most accurate to get to the 0.0 whatever ounce of material you need. Some containers, maybe some empty old recycled containers to pour your ingredients into to measure it with, as well as, of course, a heating element or a crock pot that I use for melting. There's a different number of materials used for encaustics. Go online, see what the other people use, see what's appropriate for you. I like a crock pot. Don't break it. I like a crock pot. It gets just hot enough to get the job done, so there it is. So you find the one that you like best and you use that. Other things that you will need: a dust mask for when you're measuring out your ingredients, because you have to smash up those damar resin crystals into tiny bits. Some muffin pans or metal tins, something to use to pour the hot wax into while it cools down. And I find that these muffin tins make a nice shape and convenient size usable hard wax once cooled down. So I can determine if I have a large work, I'll pop in 2 bars. If I have a small work, I'll pop in 1 bar. You could also get very tiny ones. If you're doing very small works and you don't feel like melting a whole bunch of wax, you can make tiny little bars of wax. Did I go over the jar that you need to pour the hot wax into? You need to clean out all the impurities from the damar resin mixed with the different waxes by taking a jar, large mouth preferably, easier to get into, nice piece of cheesecloth, layered 3 times or so, and a rubber band to hold the whole thing in place. I get it so it's solid, but you also need it puckered in, because that wax is going to fill up pretty quick while you're pouring. You don't want to overflow too much. As you can see, it happens a lot with me. Anyhow, okay, great. So when the wax is done, you pour it into this receptacle. That pouch of cheesecloth is going to help strain out, catch a lot of impurities. And then you very quickly, when you're done, pluck this up, discard, being careful because it's hot. And anyway, we're going to get to that later, aren't we? The recipe. Now the recipe of the 3 parts. Beeswax, 16 ounces, usually comes around 16 ounces for a bar. The next size up, 3.6 ounces of damar resin. I get up the bag by the pound. You could get larger bags, depending on what you could afford at the time or what you need. The next one is the carnauba wax, which is 0.5 ounces that you need for that. So it's 16 ounces of beeswax, 3.6 ounces of damar resin crystals crushed, and 0.5 ounces of the carnauba wax, which is the brittle hardening wax. That's why I use so little, because it's brittle. You use very little, otherwise you overdo it even by the point. 0.5 is a safe zone. I could probably go 0.6, maybe I could go 0.7, maybe no. I don't think I could go 0.8. It starts getting brittle and cracks, and when it dries, it could flake. So you be careful with your measurements. This is why I recommend you use a digital scale to get as close as possible. Okay, great. So there it is. There's your recipe. Boom. Let's measure out some of these items one by one. Starting with the carnauba wax. All right, so starting with that, first of all, let's have a clean surface. It's always best. And at this point, I start wearing my gloves throughout the process, because I wind up touching a lot of these waxes that contain certain elements that, if you rub your eye, you could wind up with a irritated eye. Okay. Got my digital scale for this, if you haven't used a scale before. You'll have to know that you need to do a tare weight. So I do this, that. My cup weighs 0.3 ounces. This way, when I measure out my wax, I am not including the measurement of the cup and getting as close as possible as I need. 0.5 ounces of carnauba wax in my 0.3 ounce container for my yogurt. Okay, so here you can see how the tare works. It deducts the weight of the cup already. Then when you put the cup and the stuff, it gives you the reading of the stuff. Okay, so let's put this away at a safe distance. So we have our pre-measured wax in a safe place. Okay, let's do the beeswax next. I'll do the wax. Let's turn off the tare on that, and let's go direct on here and see how much we have. 15.98 ounces of wax to what I need being 16. What I do, this is the bag of extra pieces of wax I have broken off when purchasing multiples, and they have different sizes. So it's handy because all you need is maybe something like that. Oh, I'm already over. See, it's too much. 0.4. You need a smaller piece. So you go something like this. 16.01. Okay, if this is all a little dirty, because when we filter it through the cheesecloth, it'll catch those impurities. Okay, got all our waxes figured out. Let's move on to the damar resin crystals. Okay, here's where we start to get into the little bit more hazardous area in terms of breathing in dust and fumes. So I recommend highly that you do this entire process in a well-ventilated area. You should have some fresh air coming in. If you do it outdoors is also fine. Just be careful with wind. When this dust blows around, it might be a little troublesome, but all in all, just safety first. I'm going to now, besides use the precautionary gloves, move on to dust mask to protect me from breathing in the thing. Great. Okay. Got your bag of damar. I'll show you now what I'm going to do with this. Okay, so for the damar, let's clear up this space. Nice, right? We need 3.6 ounces. I'm going to take some of this here paper towel. I lay that down first. Next thing I do, I have a plastic bag like this. I just set up a little area to help clean up easier. You can see as I pour this, all this dust is coming up. That's a lot of dust, yes. We're going 6 too. We're going to lose some, so that's good. New cup.
Hardest to deal with. Throw the bag. Smash them up.
.6 exactly. That's what we want. Save all your devices for another time. Okay. Scale's done. We've got our measurements. Okay, done with scales, measurements done. Done with the dust blowing up. So I think it's time now that I can take this mask off and turn the fan back on if you need to. Okay, we have our ingredients. It's time to heat up the pot. Let's do a little shift. Good. The rest of the demo is about melting and combining those 3 ingredients together. It's a very slow process and you do it in steps. At this point I usually would be outside if the weather is nice, or at least have a fan going. I have windows open, no fan because of sound, so I'm willing to suffer the consequences for you. Okay, let's get those 3 ingredients here. And starting with the ingredient that takes the longest to melt, and that is the damar. There's a lot of it, and it is very hard and sticky. This is why we crush it up as small as possible without it becoming too much of a powder, because then you'll just lose it altogether. Anyway, that's why I crush it up. All right, now this is when your hot plate or your crock pot comes in. I've got mine preheated already for TV's sake. You want to put that up pretty high. You don't want to go higher than 200 degrees if you can. If you have a way to take a measurement, stick below 200. Otherwise, you just keep your eye on things here. Now, just gonna got my hot crock pot, gonna give it a quick clean. It's okay if it's a little dirty because we are gonna filter garbage. Okay, nice and hot. Very carefully reaching in to the bottom without shaking or dropping from too high. Drop in your damar. If you're using a crock pot like me, I suggest you drop in around the edges, which stay the hottest. Okay, so that damar takes a while to melt down. You don't want to start mixing too soon because it's so sticky, it just winds up getting all over your mixing stick and stuff, and you want to wait till that really melts to a goo. Don't want any more of those hard crystals around. That's why it's best to lay it as flat as possible, not too high of pillars of resin. Don't want to make too many big mounds of resin. Nice thin layer. You can sort of mix around the dry stuff. But you start to notice that it becomes a really thick, gooey substance. It's a resin, and because it's too difficult to mix before you put the beeswax. So you want to wait till the beeswax is in before you really start mixing it about. Let's step away from this and let it melt for a while. I'm going to keep it uncovered because I don't want any burning to happen. These crock pots can get a little over 200. That's why I say keep an eye on things. But you know, you can get those hot plates that have the temperature gauges, so if you want to be very precise about temperature. Here you just keep an eye, watch out for fumes. You don't want to see any smoke coming up. That means your fire is too high. You see smoke. I don't see smoke. Alright, so be sure to keep an eye on your resin as it melts. It slowly becomes a gooey, tacky slime, very sticky, very hard to manage. And as you move it around, you'll notice the top doesn't melt as quick as the bottom, so you got to shift it around a little bit to be sure to get it nice and melted before you add the beeswax. It's going to wind up sticking to your implement, so a good way to deal with it, let it dry a little bit, and then it'll crack off. Then you can mix it back in. Okay, that damar is melting down. Something good to do while you're waiting for that is start prepping your beeswax. Usually they come in these large blocks, or I get them in these large blocks. I think you can get smaller pieces, but this is pretty much equal to the amount that I use every time I make wax, so I just keep it as that. Got my surface paper towel, helps things from sliding around a little. Have a dedicated knife just for things like this. You don't want to use this for your mutton. I break up the beeswax bar like this to help speed up the melting process, and also by scoring around the edges and snapping a piece off, I wind up with a lot less waste than hammering it or trying to push a knife all the way through. Get a nice hard edge and then just pop that piece right off. Perfect. Do that again and again. Boom, got your 3 pieces, right? It's going to make melting much quicker. Now, because of all this loss that you have all over the place, you need to remeasure. Make sure you get back to your 16 ounces of beeswax. clean some of the pieces that broke off. Okay. 16. Great. So we got our 16 back. Let's clean up our station. While I have you, I'm going to show you quickly what I do with my dedicated tools for wax to clean. You gotta be careful, of course. Take a heat gun. It's ready for your next wax cutting job. When the damar resin has melted down enough so there's no more powder or rocks, you can start adding in the beeswax blocks. The blocks are going to melt much quicker than the resin did. And once it's melted down some, you're going to find it much easier to mix the two together. I try to make sure I use all the scraps that made up the whole 16 ounces of the beeswax. I want to keep the ratio as close as possible to the recipe to maintain consistent results. As the wax starts to melt, start blending the two together slowly. The cold wax is going to stop the damar from melting, so you got to keep moving it around to keep it on the heat. Here you see the wax is melted down a bunch, and the damar still remains tacky and sticky, difficult to work with. You got to keep moving it around, keeping it on the hotter parts of the crock pot. But while mixing, be very, very careful. You've got to remember this is very hot wax, and splashing could lead to a serious burn. After some time, all the wax is melted down. All the damar is melted down as well. If you scoop around the bottom, you still see it's a little bit thick. As long as you keep on mixing it, it's eventually blends all together into one liquid. But we're not done yet. We still need to add the final ingredient. That is the carnauba wax. The carnauba wax is in tiny little flakes. Gonna let this cook for like another few minutes. Kind of semi-cover one on high. I leave it a little bit open, but that helps get it nice and hot so everything can mix together. Okay, so while we're waiting for that last bit of wax to melt and combine, let's get our jar ready. Brought this up briefly earlier. Let's go over this again real quick. Big mouth jar, glass, nice piece of cheesecloth, fold it over a couple of times. Cut this down a little bit. Now I want the cheesecloth to be layered enough to catch the little bits of impurities in our wax. But if it's too bunched up, I notice the wax doesn't sink down fast enough before it dries and it just clogs up. So I'm going to say fold it over once so it's a 2-ply. And I need a rubber band, one here, one handy. Make a nice deep pocket. Fight the rubber band a little bit. Let's start from there. Clean up your workspace. Get ready to pour the wax into the muffin tins. Okay, so got my muffin tins ready to roll, got my jar ready to pour into. The wax is fully melted. Out of the way. Pick it out. Oh yeah, it's just pure liquid. My stick is not getting stuck in any damar residue sticky patches. And when it's all flowing, just like a liquid, out any heavy bits getting caught, that's when you know it's ready. And no need to delay. At this point, let's get this wax into the tips and start cooling. For this part, I like to put on a pair of heat-resistant gloves or something to protect my hands from the hot crock pot. Also, protective eyewear, heaven forbid any splashing into the eyes. You want to protect those babies. Okay. Over. I'm going to turn this off now so I don't forget after I do all these other steps. I may have to do the cheesecloth step twice, depending on how much wax I got, or if the first attempt doesn't work. Alright, this part, please be very careful in handling this stuff. Don't do it fast, don't pour quickly. Even though it dries very fast, you're trying to do this as fast as you can. Do not rush it. It is not worth the immense burns that this will give you. Because this hot wax gets on your skin, it doesn't wash off, it sticks to you. Alright, get a nice, safe, firm grip so you know that you can hold that for a few seconds. Pour that right in. Carefully, watching it fill. Just gonna hit the top of that wax. I'm gonna stop there. Put my hand over that so when that snaps up, it doesn't go into my face with hot wax. Get that out of the picture before that starts cooling too much. Carefully pouring them into these little muffin compartments. Fill them up, fill them up, fill them up. Okay, it's already drying up and stop pouring. I'm going to stop there. I'm giving this one more little tiny mix. Don't pour quick. Easy does it. Easy does it. There, it's nice. Nice, nice. Okay, we could stop there because a little bit of wax. Hand over the top of the jar. Stop that from snapping in your face. Catch that. Get that out of the way. This time I'm going to pour a few little guys here for smaller wax jobs. That is that. Okay. I'm going to bring you in here and I'm going to show you some of this leftover dirt that we caught. So here you can see in the crock pot all the bits and pieces that didn't go in, that stayed behind, as well as this is already stuck there, nice and dry. Yeah, our cheesecloth also has caught a lot of these impurities, kept that from going inside of the wax, giving us a nice cleaner wax. Okay, so you got all your trash to discard. Before your crock pot pan cools down completely, grab some paper towels or spare rags or stuff that you're going to throw away and use that to clean the inside of your pot. Okay, wow, okay, everything's clean. Station is sorted out. Get your 1, 2 trays of wax. You can see some of it's already getting nice and milky, cooling down. So you want to let this sit for a few hours unbothered, untouched, a place where dust and debris is not going to fly in. If it's outdoors, cover it with a box. If it's indoors, it should be okay. If we got a fan going, cover it with a box that will keep dust and hairs from entering your wax. And then we'll pop them out of their muffin trays. Now, well, hello and good morning. Got a cup of coffee going, getting ready to check out our wax, how it turned out. It's been drying overnight. I like to let it go overnight before you start popping it out of here. Otherwise it might be too difficult and you could break up your bars. Okay, so why don't we bring you in close and take a look at these bars of wax. All right, here are the bars up close. You can see I've got a nice soft pale yellow color. Now all beeswax has this yellow color, and I did add damar, which has a amber tint, and it's the carnauba wax also has a slight amber tint to it. But when laying thin layers of wax on top of stuff, it really doesn't affect it so greatly. It doesn't shift the color so much. For me, I find no problem. Now we're ready to pop these out now that these are nice and cool. Let's start with these big fellas. It should be a piece of cake. You should really be able to just tap the bottom as you would, I don't know, a muffin of sorts. Got all my wax out of the tins. Look at that. Now you'll notice what happens is all of the impurities sink to the bottom of the wax while it's still warm. You see that? You see that all right? Which is very handy because before I drop one of these guys in a crock pot, I shave the bottom with a razor blade, just scraping off all this stuff here, you know, and then you wind up with a cleaner piece of wax. And you have less to deal with while applying. Maybe you want a sandwich. I don't care. Don't eat it. Don't eat it. No. Okay, well, pretty much that's it in a nutshell, how I make wax encaustic bars for coating my print work, my photography, my mixed medias, my paintings, my sculptures. I coat everything in it. I make birdhouses, I put that outside, I cover those in wax to protect the elements. You can use it for a number of applications. Do research though. If you're going to put it on your art, I don't want you just to make it, throw it on your art, because what if it ruins, and I don't want to be blamed for that. Anyhow, look up wax encaustics, do some investigating. It's interesting, it's fun to learn, pass along the knowledge. If you like my recipe, use it. Otherwise, explore a little bit. Try to learn your own recipe. If you want something more soft, if you want something more brittle that cracks, you can get cracking. You can do a whole number of things, but you have to do your own homework on that. I store my wax in these, you know, to-go food containers that I save here. And what I do is I write the recipe on the top of every single lid. This way, I know exactly what I'm working with. Now these wax bars are older. You can see I've had these dried for several months and they're much whiter than this, so these actually become less yellow as it dries. I need more containers. I've got some. I do hope you did enjoy this DIY demo video on how I make wax encaustics for my work. Hopefully it comes in handy for your work, or at least inspires you to go out and figure out what wax works best for you. It's not the most glamorous and fun, eventful things to watch me do, but honestly, I can't see my work without this stuff right now. I love wax encaustics. I love working with it. I love the way it smells, and I like the process also, putting it together. It's very accurate, scientific, and then you could go and be messy. Have fun, have a good time. Anyway, yes, if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to check out some of the other videos I have here on the Gimme Babble YouTube channel. How to make frames, how to mount prints, which will include how to apply wax encaustics to your prints. It's a whole nother bag of bones in there, all right? Maybe I'll do another video down the line, specifics of large works, wax, and some of the more tricky works to coat and wax with multiple textures and layers. Also, please be sure to check out Gimme Babble podcast on iTunes and SoundCloud, where David Stupakis and I, David Hochbaum, talk a lot about the art that we make, the life that we live, the struggles, the challenges, what we've been through, whether it's the galleries or the friendships or the dramas of family and whatnot. And we share our experience as well as invite other people to share theirs. Please join in the conversation. Write in to gimmebabble@gmail.com for any questions you want to ask us about art, process, life, whatever. Keep it clean or just keep it nice. Also, if you may be interested, please do check out our websites where we offer small works, limited edition print series, stuff you might not normally find in galleries. I don't like using the term affordable art, but it is quite affordable because of the size and the medium. And if you can't go out and buy large scale artwork, buying small scale artwork will enhance your life as well as help keep us being able to do these podcasts, these videos, keep our studios rolling, keeping the lights on, paying for materials. It's all greatly appreciated. Please check out davidhochbaum.bigcartel.com and also davidstupakis.bigcartel.com. These websites have fluctuating works that change from time to time of the lower price scale, affordable, but high quality, beautiful print work, small artwork, one-of-a-kind originals. You're not missing out on quality, but you have a chance to actually afford some of the smaller works. Go out there. It is supporting this whole thing. And we thank you and we love you for it. We hope to see you again soon. That's how you make the wax.